Under the Silver Moon by Kimberly J. Kreines. Halana and Alena are trackers, hunters and protectors who live in the depths of the dark woods that border the edges of Kessig province, the woods known as the Ulvenwald. Innistrad's ancient forest is their domain, and they've long stood as a bulwark between the horrors within and the innocence without. But of late, things in the woods have begun to shift. You know that feeling, that crawling feeling. Farmer Warren was standing in front of the long table of elders, his plump, wide-eyed wife at his side. Both had turned their backs to the elders in favour of addressing the gassed of townsfolk gathered in the cramped parish commons. Halana looked on from the seat closest to the door, where she sat next to Alena. "It's like a beetle is crawling up the back of your neck." Warren shuddered as he spoke. "Right up from the base of it and straight into your hair." It was odd, Hal thought, that he should speak of that feeling now, today. She had never heard mention of such a thing before, never known such a sensation was possible. Not until this very morning. She had woken with it, something ticking on the back of her neck, crawling up her spine. It had made her feel unsettled, which in itself was extremely peculiar. So the fact that the feeling, which had crept after her out of their bed at camp through the woods and into town, should be brought up again so soon after she first felt it was enough of a strangeness to dredge up another wave of it. She suppressed a shudder of her own. So real that you have no choice but to wonder if something's really there, you know? Farmer Warren itched the back of his neck furiously. Seeing him do so made Hal realize she was doing the same. She clasped both hands on her lap. Something horrible could be burrowing under your skin, and you'd never know it. Many a townsfolk twitched and shifted in their seats, itching along with Farmer Warren. Yes, yes. Elder Coleman waved his thick hand as though shooing away a fly. We all know the feeling, Warren, but what's it got to do with why you've come here today before the council? Everything. Farmer Warren turned back to face all 11 of the elders present. They were down from their usual 12, as Elder Solomon was absent due to her performing the second day of death rites to see good Lady Mary into the blessed sleep. That crawling feeling is how I know I'm right. Right about what, Warren? Spit it out already, Elder Glather hollered.
One of our cattle is possessed.
Farmer Warren's wife seemed unable to contain herself.
Gone mad in the middle of the night, and it ate the other one. Dragged it all around the pasture first, though. I saw the tracks myself. The pain the poor animal must have endured. Then the mad one just devoured it. It left nothing behind but the bones and teeth.
There were gasps from the townsfolk. And how do you know it was the first cow that ate the second? Elder Coleman asked.
I saw the blood on its own snout this very morning.
More gasps. Hal looked to Alena. Communication between them required no words. They both knew that the Warrens' farm was situated at the edge of town. They both knew it abutted the woods of the Ulvenwald, and they both knew what beasts had, of late, made a fateful resurgence in their forest. In the span of a fortnight, Alena and Hal had each on their own dispatched 3 lycanthropes, and in addition, together they had taken out a whole pack, small but certainly a pack, just the night before. But those encounters had all been far enough from Gatstuff to not raise concern, Hal having followed a distant howl halfway down the Bower Passage, and the one Alena had taken was out at the Natter Knolls. But now their shared look said there was reason to believe the beasts had become brazen, that they were working their way to the fringes of the woods, to the towns, to the people. That was unacceptable. The Ulvenwald was Alena's and Hal's domain, and they would not let its dark horrors leak out to harm the innocent.
Our wards.
Wife Warren's wail drew Hal's attention back to the front of the room.
She made our shoddy wards.
The farmer's wife thrust an accusatory finger in the direction of good Lady Evelyn, who gasped and clutched at the ward at her neck.
She made them and they failed.
It couldn't have been the wards. The man seated at Evelyn's side jumped up to her defence. Lady Evelyn makes the best and most potent wards this town, nay this land has ever seen. Order! Elder Coleman shouted, pounding his thick flat hand on the table of elders. But he was ignored.
Then how do you explain the possessed cow?
Wife Warren challenged.
The tracks that show it dragged the other around our farm. The bones it left behind after feeding.
Aye! Someone shouted from the back. The wards didn't do their work, came another voice. There can be no doubt. The wards failed. The dark cow was possessed. Farmer Warren seemed to have gathered courage to speak from the rallying of so many townsfolk to his cause. We are the victims of Lady Evelyn's neglect. He held tight to his own ward and beseeched both the townsfolk and the elders. We cannot afford to go one more night without a proper ward. There was a rabble of agreement. It made sense to Hal that the townsfolk would blame it on faulty wards, that they would think their cow possessed by an evil spirit. These were things they could define. These were things they had the means to put right. Things that did not upset the careful balance that they believed to govern their world. They did not live in the same reality that Hal and Alena did. The townsfolk didn't see what happened in the darkness, in the woods. They lived in a world protected by the light of the angel Avison. They believed themselves safe from things like werewolves. But even in Avison's world, the werewolves were never completely wiped out. Lycanthropes had had a constant presence in the Ulvenwald, significantly diminished though it was. Hal and Alena would know. They had heard the lycanthrope's unearthly howls echoing off the trees, a permanent fixture in the forest's deepest reaches. Thinking of their howls, Hal shifted uncomfortably in her chair. The crawling feeling returned to the back of her neck. A howl was what she had heard, but it brought on the unwelcome feeling in the first place. She had first thought she had dreamt it. The fight earlier that same night with the pack had been playing out in her dreams. It had been some time since she and Alena had faced a pack. It had also been some time since they had faced so many lycanthropes in such a short span. Hal had been seeing flashes of their muscles, their haunches in her mind as she laid in bed, so she had not been surprised that she woke thinking that she had heard a howl. But now, looking at the bulging eyes of wife Warren's face, she worried that the howl had not been in her head, had not been a memory, nor a dream, but the sound of a real and true beast. The very beast, in fact, that had dared to come into the town, had dared to feast on the Warrens' domestic cattle, would not be allowed to do so again. Shall we? Hal silently mouthed the invitation to Alena. Alena's face lit up, the glow of the hunt already upon her. Together they rose. Hal's fingers tingled in anticipation, her eyes on the handle of the nearby door. The door that in the next instant flew open. Innkeeper Shoren and his wife Elsa charged into the parish hall.
"Ring the town bell!"
Elsa cried. "She's gone," the innkeeper said.
"She's dead! He killed her!"
Any order that Elder Coleman had succeeded in restoring in the last moments went out the window. The townsfolk howled and shrieked and jumped to their feet.
"Oh, the poor girl!"
Elsa wailed.
"The blood was all over. I can't imagine what he did with her body. I knew he was a depraved and wicked man. I knew it from the moment they came to the inn, from the moment they came to town."
It was obvious who the victim and accused were supposed to be. The Poulters from Gavany. They were currently the only guests at the inn. The only guests the inn had seen in the last 3 months. Hal and Alena had found the Cathar and his wife themselves no more than a week ago, wandering the deep paths of the Ulvenwald up near Bower Passage. Of course Hal and Alena had helped them. Of course they had seen the two out of the Twisted Wood into Gatstaff, fighting off no fewer than 3 wolves, 1 ghoul and a possessed oak on the way. Hal smiled at the memory of Elena's swift dispatching of the tree. The highly skilled tracker had improved her grappling skills so significantly over the past year that Hal wouldn't be surprised if she could take down a giant scab without any sort of outside assistance. The Poulters had thanked Hal and Alena in kind, or at least Mr. Poulter had, for his wife had been so shocked by the trials of traversing the dark wood that her slender form had retreated entirely under the hood of her riding cloak. Mr. Poulter, who explained he was a Cathar of the Lunar Council, insisted on giving Hal and Alena a token of protection, one that he had used many times, he claimed, to help him in his duty as guard of the mausoleum. Hal and Alena had taken the token politely, but it meant little to them, for they did not believe in the need for such things, not when they had each other.
"Ring the bell!"
Wife Shoren commanded once more.
"There's a murderer on the loose in our town."
Hal would not have thought the Poulters, either one, to be a murderer. The Cathar was kindly, and his wife most obliging, if slightly fragile. Could it be that this too was the lycanthrope? It certainly seemed so.
"Come on,"
Alena hissed, gesturing toward the door, which was no longer barricaded. The 2 innkeepers had moved farther into the fray, embraced by the folds of townsfolk who were hungry for further details of the gruesome happenings. Hal and Alena slipped easily through the crowd without drawing attention. They were well practiced at moving by stealth, and in 2 quick, lithe strides they were at the door and on the cobbled street.
So it...
Hal began.
Or they.
Alena said.
Yes, or they. This could have been the work of a pack. Another pack. That would make 2 packs that were in relatively close proximity in one night. That hasn't happened in some time.
She cast a glance at Alena, who did not look back. So focused was she on their heading.
Either way, the lone lycanthrope or the pack attacked within the boundaries of Gatstuff at least twice last night. Once the cow at the Warrens' farm,
And once Mrs. Poulter at the Shorns Inn.
Hal abruptly halted in her tracks, and her hands flew to cover her gaping mouth. Her mind had just put something together.
What is it?
It's shocking to be sure, but where the townsfolk are far off in their assumption of the possessed cow, they are not so far off at all in properly identifying the one responsible for Mrs. Poulter's murder. In the inn,
In the Poulter's room. Behind a locked door.
with no mention of a broken window or forced entry.
As one they changed course, running for the Shorens Inn.